Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the EIB Benelux Pavilion here at COP28 in Dubai. We're delighted to see all of you here in Dubai, but also those of you joining us online as well. We're going to be discussing a hugely important issue today, a technology that is very much in the near future, very much in progress, green hydrogen. Low carbon hydrogen. It's a fuel that many are looking to, not as a magic bullet, but as a genuine solution to some of the most intractable problems we're facing in the transition to a zero carbon future. Now, in this journey, there's a key challenge, which is about the export and the import of this new fuel, its production, the relationships between those who import and export, the way in which Europe is going to work with its producers as well. And that's why we're so happy to be welcoming in a moment a panel who's really going to give us a perspective on some of those challenges. We're here at the European Investment Bank Pavilion, which we also share with the Benelux. And this is actually a joint organization event with the Benelux Secretariat. Now that is really significant in this panel because Benelux is going to be at the center of this whole new technology in terms of the role it plays both in the demand for the fuel, but also in how it makes sure it gets to the rest of Europe. There's some really striking figures that you're going to hear in a moment from a study that's just been produced. I think one of them that really sticks with me is that 70% of the green hydrogen that's going to come from outside Europe will go through the ports of Benelux. That, if you can think about it for a minute, presents a huge opportunity, but also a challenge. So, without further ado, I'm going to first, with great pleasure, ask Frans Wekers, who's the Secretary General of the Benelux Secretariat, to kick us off and get us in the mood. Frans, over there. And I've been told to say, please speak into the microphone directionally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dear ambassadors, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to welcome you at the joint EIB Benelux Pavilion to talk about green hydrogen partnerships. Today, two international organizations that are key for cross-border development of a widespread hydrogen uptake join forces. And with our dear friends of the European Investment Bank, who bring with them a high level of expertise in climate finance, and the Benelux Union that has been of the forefront of policy development and regional cross-border cooperation over decades in the fields of energy, we want to deepen hydrogen cooperation together with you even further. The climate and energy stakeholders, 2 years ago, the Benelux Energy Ministers commissioned the Benelux General Secretariat to explore the cross-border hydrogen value chain in the Benelux and in its neighboring regions, which are Hauts-de-France, Grand Est, North Rhine-Westphalia, Saarland, Rhineland-Palatinate and Lower Saxony. And this study, successfully conducted by Waterstofnet and published last summer, is full of enlightening data and shows that the Benelux and its neighboring regions will play a key role in the development of hydrogen and will represent by 2030 within the EU. And there are the numbers: 15% of the hydrogen production, 67% of the import of hydrogen, 24% of pipeline length, 31% of the storage needs and 26% of the storage potential, 41% of the hydrogen demand for chemicals and 35% of the hydrogen demand for steel. And the REpowerEU strategy calls for the production within the EU of 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen by 2030. And as our study shows, the Benelux is indispensable for the development of hydrogen energy in the EU. due to our strategic location, strong industrial base, and commitment and sustainability. And as our Dutch ambassador in Brussels recently put it, when we presented the study last summer, he said, we have the minds, the means, and the motivation to make this work. However, the widespread adoption of hydrogen faces several challenges. One of these challenges is the efficient production of green hydrogen and the need to scale up at a high speed. This cannot be achieved in the Benelux and the EU alone. And an important outcome of this study is that the role of import and shaping new partnership with third countries is crucial for the Benelux region. And as each country is signing MOUs and agreements to collaborate on renewable hydrogen and to become an import and transit hub, collaboration and financial mechanisms are key. How can partnerships at a global scale help to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors, such as steel, chemicals and heavy transport? And which mechanisms are there to facilitate the import of renewable hydrogen from third countries, such as Namibia and Chile? And how do we foster balanced and sustainable development, both in the Benelux as well as in the region of our new energy partners? These are the questions of today's debate. We believe it's essential to strengthen regional and cross-border cooperation on hydrogen to accelerate the deployment of hydrogen market and facilitate imports. In order for third countries developing this new industry to have a clear picture of their future business partners and to create a mutual benefit in developing in future hydrogen economy. And we hope that our Benelux dynamics will continue to inspire the rest of the world, of the rest of Europe and the world. Ladies and gentlemen, you as policy makers and decision takers are at the beginning of a whole new energy era where you can make a real change. And we as Benelux Cooperation stand with you to test out new ideas and facilitate, where needed, new policy and agreements that will green our societies and industries. So let us build partnerships today that connect our countries and create common ways to a sustainable hydrogen future. Thank you very much. That's our study, and I will hand over it after this event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wekers. So you've mentioned partnership. That's obviously a key theme of our debate today. And it's in this spirit that I want to invite our Vice President from the European Investment Bank, Ambroise Fayolle, to speak a bit about what the partnership on hydrogen has actually meant in terms of agreements and lending for countries, and how you see this challenge, Vice President.
Thank you very much, Shirin. Thanks a lot to our friends and shareholders from the Benelux for hosting this event and for actually allowing EIB to have a very nice place to be in the COPs for many years. I will just make a few comments because I think the most interesting is to listen to the panelists. But clearly for us as the Bank of the European Union, transforming itself as the climate bank of the European Union, hydrogen and clean and low carbon hydrogen has a special role to play. And this was seen as one of the targets that we wanted to achieve in looking at the climate neutrality objective of Europe by 2050. But this is even more important with the REpowerEU initiative that has been launched a couple of years ago, and including the target of 10 million tons of domestic renewable energy hydrogen production and 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen imports by 2030. What I would like, and actually this issue is really driven by the political level in Europe, and I very much welcome the political agreement reached last week between the Council and the Parliament on the Directive on Common Rules for the Internal Markets in renewable energy and natural gas and in hydrogen. What I would like just to say is a few remarks on why I think it is really important to develop this clean hydrogen, and what we as EIB we can do, and finally I will say just a word in conclusion about developing countries. One word on why it is important. I think it is important for two issues. The first one is clean, low-carbon hydrogen is very much one of the big avenues of innovation, and innovation for climate. And for us, the combination of innovation and climate has become at the cornerstone of our activity. And actually, we do not start today with working on hydrogen. We have actually over the last 10 years provided 1 billion financing, mostly on research and development, in key components, in electrolyzers, in fuel cells, in hydrogen vehicles, first of a kind demonstration projects. That is what we have tried to do, and I think this is really what we intend to develop with REpowerEU. The second reason why it is important, it's because we see the objective of reaching, especially by 2030, the climate objective of Europe. We need, if we want to achieve that, to do quickly good results on hard-to-abate sectors. This is where you are going to have the biggest impact in the industry, and this is where we see the immediate potential for low-carbon hydrogen to replace grey hydrogen in these hard-to-abate sectors, being iron, steel, chemicals, fertilizer, etc. And this is also why we think this potential for low carbon and clean hydrogen is so important for Europe. What we can do, two things. We can do financing, and actually thanks to REpowerEU we can do more financing to innovative electrification and hydrogen application in industry, to innovative clean tech manufacturing, and mid-sized projects that are, for the time being, pilots for validating, testing, optimizing highly innovative solutions through the Innovation Fund. What we can also do is advisory, and this is very important in this sector of innovation. And our advisory services have strengthened the support to hydrogen projects through a free-of-charge advisory package to prepare hydrogen projects, technical and financial advisory, in collaboration with the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, with a monitoring portfolio of over 50 projects that we have currently seeking engagement with EIB of potential financing. So we are, I would say, on a good track, and it is, to me, very important because this is really going to be key if we are successful. Now, to achieve the clean targets of Europe. Now, one final word in conclusion about clean hydrogen, low-carbon hydrogen, renewable hydrogen is not an issue that is only for European countries in Europe. It is also very important that we develop projects in emerging and developing countries, where you have a lot of renewable energy, where you have a lot of potential, and that we develop these projects in line with not only to provide imports to Europe, but also to develop there, on-site, the industry that is needed for their development. And we are doing this in countries like Egypt. We are having a look at Mauritania. We have a look at Namibia. We have a look at many countries in Africa and elsewhere. I mean, the panel will certainly speak about all the difficulties that you face when you develop that, especially in countries where you don't have necessarily significant water resources, which is also important. But I think if we want to be successful, we absolutely need to have this around the world, and not only the great projects that we are developing, and we are developing that, including for steel in northern Sweden, with a great project that I hope we are going to be able to announce very soon. If we do that only in Europe, we will not be successful. So we try to do this both in Europe, to cope with our objectives in Europe, and also outside Europe, to help us achieve our objectives in Europe, and to help the development of countries outside Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vice President, and for also helping us set the scene for some of the issues we're going to be talking about on the panel in a moment. But before we do, I'm very happy to invite the ambassador from Luxembourg to, you're the ambassador to the United Arab Emirates. And of course, Luxembourg is the other host of this pavilion with whom the EIB shares a very close partnership, not least through the Green Climate Finance Platform. Robert Lauer, can you give us a sense of what you find interesting in this study, and maybe a little bit of a perspective from the Luxembourg side of where this huge potential is going? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Secretary General, Mr. Vice President, colleagues. I'm very happy to be here because the EIB has its home in Luxembourg, and now we share a temporary home here together with our Benelux partners at COP28. I highlight this because I think the EIB is actually the reason why we are able to host an EIB Benelux pavilion at every single COP. I think you deserve some merit and applause for this, because you organized this whole thing for us. So with that, thank you. You asked me what I found interesting in this report. I must say that, you know, as a non-expert in matters of energy and specifically hydrogen, I was wondering, what is this all about? But in an essence, it is the you know, the future of Europe as an industrial producer. Our industry sectors continue to require energy. The current energy mix is non-viable, so we're looking for solutions. Hydrogen is one of them. And I think that is part of the motivation why the then Luxembourg chairmanship of the Benelux and our then Minister of Energy, Claude Turmes, thought it would be a good idea to launch this study. The results that struck me are this inadequation between the demand on the one hand and the supply and the means of local production in Europe, and specifically Benelux on the other. What struck me, the figure that struck me, is that 67% of the EU's need for hydrogen, of the Benelux plus, so this is the Benelux, the 3 Benelux countries, plus the neighboring regions in France and in Germany, we account for 67% of the need for hydrogen in the European Union. I mean, that is a staggering amount, and it just illustrates what the challenge is. And specifically, if you juxtapose that next to what we can apparently produce in terms of hydrogen, which, if I read my files and the briefing that was kindly provided by my colleagues, if I read those correctly, will only amount to 15%. So we need to find a way of how to adequate those two. Production potential is, I mean, we are going to work on that, is one of the priorities of my government too, specifically, you know, to boost green hydrogen production, because hydrogen comes in many colors. Some of them are more comestible to my government back home in Luxembourg, others are not much so. The nuclear variety, for instance, I don't know which color it comes in, but that is irrelevant. But nevertheless, we need the energy. We need to boost production in Benelux Plus, in the European Union as such, but we will never be able to cater for all of our needs. And that is why the infrastructure that we have already, thanks to the ports in Belgium and in the Netherlands, is very important. We don't have any seaports in Luxembourg, but with rising sea levels, that is something we might factor in the distant future. We have the infrastructure in terms of pipelines, but that needs to be extended as well. But the essence of it is we cannot do this alone, neither as Benelux Plus, neither as the European Union. We need other partners around the world. We need partners in South America. Chile is represented here. We're going to hear from you, sir. We also need it from Africa. And in that particular respect, we in Luxembourg have already done another study together with our colleagues in Cabo Verde, which is one of the target countries of our development aid, in order to see what the potential is in Cabo Verde for the production of green hydrogen and also for the viability of exports from Cabo Verde to Europe and Luxembourg. So there are many challenges. I would be glad to hear from a panel of experts on how to address these. How do we rise up together to win the day and make our energy sector and industrial sectors in Luxembourg, in the Benelux Plus, but also in the European Union, greener thanks to hydrogen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So I'm just going to recover my timekeeper, and let's get stuck into some of these questions, and they certainly are fascinating ones, both in terms of the technology, the infrastructure needed to make these partnerships work. There's a big political subtext to it all as well. Maybe, first of all, I'll introduce the panel. So I'm very happy to have Elina Reuner, who is actually from the European Investment Bank. Elina heads our operations support and climate department at the EIB. Federico from the Ministry of Energy in Chile, Federico Bernadelli. You're the Deputy Head of the International Affairs Office, and great to have you with us. We're really interested to hear your perspective, both as a country that is already quite far down the line in terms of starting to put the infrastructure in place. Obviously, the EIB and Chile are working closely together. But also, I'd like to hear from you a bit about these issues around partnership, what that should look like, local demand, really important issues brought up by the Vice President and the Ambassador both. Also very happy to have the person that knows all about the technology and its potential. Tiffany Vass is an energy analyst from the International Energy Agency, and great to have you, Tiffany. And Rodrigo Pinto Scholtbach is the coordinator for EU hydrogen at the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy of the Netherlands, and of course the Dutch government being the other host of this pavilion. And Rodrigo, you were telling me earlier, and I want to hear about that there's been some interesting work here at this COP on agreements and roadmaps for countries going forward, precisely on what we're talking about, the partnership issue. Let me start with you first, Federico, though. Give us a sense of the level of ambition that Chile has, where you are in terms of your ambition for hydrogen, green hydrogen. You've got big ambitions for 2030, 2040. What does that mean for you?
Is it working? Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. I think it's a good opportunity to represent the Chilean government and to highlight how the last year we strengthened our cooperation with Benelux and the European Investment Bank. So we are very thankful to Benelux governments in general and to the bank. Let me tell you about the Chilean approach. It's a so-called 4P approach. So it's policy. Our energy policy is a state policy, and especially the hydrogen policy is a state policy. It doesn't depend necessarily from the government. We started in 2020 launching the green hydrogen national strategy. It was launched by the previous government. Now we have a change of coalition. The new coalition endorsed the target of this policy, specifically 5 gigawatt electrolyzers installed by 2025. It's going to be no easy to achieve them.
Yeah, that's nearly
it's
tomorrow.
not easy to achieve them. It's tomorrow. I am more confident that we will much closer to achieve the 25 gigawatt electrolyzer by 2030. Second P, participation. We are now drafting, and next week will be launched an action plan, 2023-2030, which is basically the tactic that develop the national strategy launched in 2020. The action plan, it's about building consensus. So through open workshops all around the country, the first semester of this year, 2,500 people attended and provided their point of view, their perspective to enriching this plan. And then this plan was guided by a bipartisan strategic committee formed by former Minister of Republic and 2 former ministers of the previous government that is guiding this plan that has already prioritized 25 actions that will be soon launched, presented to the population, and next year soon officially launched and presented to the President. Third P, partnerships, which is of utmost importance, not only for my office, International Affairs Office, but for the country. So we do believe in international cooperation. There's no country that will trigger the development of the industry alone. And we have implemented in the last 2 years and a half, let's say, a multi-level international cooperation strategy, public cooperation, government to government, focused mainly on regulation, certification, standards, and not only. And in this case, the example with Dutch friends and with the Belgian friends are very, very, very remarkable. On the other hand, we have public-private cooperation with ports, for example. We need the expertise of European ports. We need the expertise of our friends of Antwerp. We need the expertise of our friends of Rotterdam. We have already renewed this memorandum understanding we have signed with 2 ports. We are working since for the last 2 years, and now we have renewed and deepened our cooperation for the next 3 years. And then we have also, in this line, the international cooperation with the multilateral banking and the development banking. So European Bank of Investment Bank is an example of it. We signed an MOU this year to deepen the cooperation also towards hydrogen, and of course Team Europe initiative that is also financed by European Investment Bank. It's a good example of it. And the last P is projects.
Yes.
We need projects.
Do you have any in the pipeline already?
We have pilot projects. Possibly Chile is the only country that is currently producing e-fuels, e-methanol, in the very south, in Patagonia. Mm-hmm. We have already exported through this IHAF project the first tank, the first vessel to Europe, to London, for testing of e-methanol. But it's not project is not only related to big production. We need pilot project on application, direct application. Yeah. And in concrete, we have, for example, a very interesting pilot project on forklift in a supermarket.
On what, sorry?
Forklift.
Forklift.
Right. In a supermarket. Mm-hmm. So in a storage center of supermarket, it's Walmart. They are producing their own hydrogen, and they feed the forklift with the green hydrogen they are producing. Mining, we have plenty of possible application in mining sector with hydrogen, trucks, mining operation, transport, bus. Talking about this last project we have, GNL Quinteros, together with Fluxys, they are working on a blending in the north of Chile in natural gas pipeline.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a bit to ask you a bit more about what the challenges are and what others who are kind of embarking on this path might learn from your experience, which obviously is still at an early stage, but it seems like it's more advanced than many. But let me ask Elena, first of all, to give us a sense of what is the EIB currently doing? Give us an overview when it comes to financing hydrogen-related projects.
Thank you, Shirin, and thank you for inviting me to this panel, and congratulations to our hosts for the excellent study that lays out actually the challenges ahead, but also the investment opportunities that this emerging hydrogen economy provides for us. So what is EIB doing? What we have done in the past, what is the current state of play, and the future prospects? Vice President already gave some detail of our activities, but let me provide a few more. So far, we have provided some 1 billion euros of financing to hydrogen-related projects that has catalyzed another billion of additional investment in this segment. And as Vice President mentioned, we have been supporting the development of the value chain, providing financing to RDI, but also when it comes to applications in the transport sector, including also the enabling infrastructure. So really supporting that foundation for the hydrogen economy to emerge, if you will. The pipeline building has been relatively slow and EU-centric, but we see now also due to the current situation in the energy markets that the momentum is building up. Our current pipeline is around 1.3 billion of hydrogen projects that we are currently looking at, and we have already financed several interesting projects. For example, we have supported together with ECO in Spain the construction of one of the largest hydrogen production plants in Europe in collaboration with Iberdrola. And also interesting, a different kind of an example in the Netherlands, where we have supported a smaller innovative company to develop and deploy a technology combining energy storage with the catalyzer stack. So very interesting projects already coming to pipe. And what's lying ahead? We had a very interesting conversation with a number of TSOs in Europe and globally on their plans for hydrogen going forward. And what we see is that in Europe, the investment plans are centering around energy clusters, building that needed renewable power, combined with production that would be then used in particular in the hard to abate sectors. We still, as mentioned, the steel sector is one, also around the chemical industry. We see these interesting projects coming to pipe in next 1 to 2 years. As far as the enabling transport infrastructure is concerned, there are plans to build also long distance transport infrastructure, but these are projects that we see only coming to the stage of financing around 3 to 4 years. But I think in summary, a lot is happening. EIB is supporting the whole value chain from R&D to deployment, and we really now need to focus on scaling up, as well as following closely the investment pipeline that is building around the enabling infrastructure, as well as around the new capacity that we need for renewable power.
And I guess the fact that the EIB, obviously, the clue is in the name, is obviously principally active in Europe, but substantially in the rest of the world
Yes.
as well, is hugely important there, because you mentioned the green steel area that might be happening in Europe, but there is a potential then, if it works out, to take it further and to scale it up, right?
Absolutely, and indeed, so far our investments have been quite Europe-centric, but we also see that indeed the market is developing outside. Mr. Vice President already mentioned that projects are emerging. Kenya, Namibia, we partnerships there.
And Chile.
And Chile is an example where we already have financed a project in conjunction and together with German KfW. Investment platform that in the future hopefully will allow financing of a number of projects around the country around hydrogen. So clearly things are already happening. Egypt was mentioned as well. And we see again both the production projects emerging around industry clusters. You mentioned hard-to-abate sectors, and also the transport infrastructure investments are being developed. But indeed, the project development capacity building is really necessary outside the EU to bring these projects to financiable state.
Thank you, Elina. And we'll come back to that issue as well of capacity building, because that's clearly a huge one. But maybe I can turn to a different challenge that has been raised and is tackled actually in this very rich study that we've been presenting this morning with you, Tiffany, from the International Energy Agency. And that is the issue of connecting supply and demand, which is also sort of key to the relationship between those European members, the Benelux countries, and countries like Chile, Namibia, others. So where do you see the role of partnership in that? Give us your perspective on this particular challenge and how we can kind of make sure we do it right from the beginning.
Great. And first to say thanks very much for having the IEA here today. I'm very happy to be discussing these topics. So I think the first thing to really keep in mind when we're talking about hydrogen, as we all know, hydrogen in and of itself is not an end. It's a means to an end, and that is to deliver low carbon services to society. So if we take just one example of the steel sector, the reason that we need green hydrogen for the steel sector is because we need green steel for end uses. So, for example, we might have a government who's wanting to build an infrastructure project, who's wanting to procure a green building. Then the construction company would need to procure green steel. In turn, the hydrogen producer needs to procure green electricity. So when you think of like all the different players along the chain, it's really quite expansive, the number of actors that would need to be involved to deliver the end service that we want, which is green services to society. And so at the IEA, we really see these partnerships as key to be connecting these very complex value chains that involve so many different actors, from technology providers, infrastructure providers, electricity providers, the hydrogen producers themselves, the demand side in terms of the hard-to-abate sectors, and then even the final consumer of these products. And then once you add onto that the international component, that you have different parts of this value chain that are potentially operating in different regulatory environments, it gets really quite complex. And so connecting these pieces is super key. And so at the IEA, some of the things that we've been doing in this area include, under our Clean Energy Ministerial, there's the Hydrogen Initiative. This is something that we've been involved in since 2019, looking at ways to bring together policymakers, private sector, other international institutions who are working in this area, and trying to create open space for dialogue, for connections, for bringing together the expertise in these different areas, because everyone's working on their own piece and might not know what someone a few steps away in the value chain is doing, or not know it quite as deeply. So when we can understand the challenges that each other are facing in different parts of the value chain in different regions, then we can start looking towards solutions. And just to give a couple of other concrete examples within the Clean Energy Ministerial Hydrogen Initiative that we've done this year. In May, there was a matchmaking platform that was held at the World Summit on Hydrogen in Rotterdam, and this is looking to connect potential off-takers in this region. And so this was one example, and the other one with our Dutch friends here and others is the International Hydrogen Trade Forum it was launched in June, and this is another way that we're looking to connect importers and exporters and facilitate these types of dialogues.
So I want to ask Rodrigo a bit more about that in a moment, but maybe before I do, Tiffany, just homing in on the Benelux and where the potential is, do you think, for both the production side of things? I mean, clearly, I think one of the figures that came out of that is that 70% of this green hydrogen will probably have to be imported, but nevertheless, there is a potential for production and also consumption. So can you give us your perspective on how that might look?
Sure. So at the IEA, we haven't done a study on the Benelux region in particular, but rather we've done some analysis on the Northwest European region. So this includes Benelux, but also a number of other countries. So this is Austria, Denmark, Germany, France, Norway, Switzerland, and the UK. So a bit of a broader region, and
sort of near.
yeah. And so we've had a roundtable with the Northwest European region that's to facilitate cooperation in this broader region. And so the first deliverable there was in 2021, a report called Hydrogen in Northwestern Europe, Vision Towards 2030. And so there we are assessing the demand in the region and how we expect that's going to evolve in future under decarbonization scenarios. And so today, this wider region produces about 6 million tons of hydrogen. This is mostly from unabated sources of natural gas used in the refining and chemical production sectors. And so we can see that moving towards 2030, we're going to see expanded demand from these sectors themselves for low-carbon hydrogen. This is in refining chemicals' existing uses, but then, of course, expansion of the new sources of demand from hard-to-abate sectors, so in particular, steel, aviation, and shipping. And so we see this as a key source of demand in this region, particularly in the steel sector, since the region is a key steel producer. And we also see key potential for this region to be producing low-carbon hydrogen. In particular, there's a good potential for offshore wind in the area, so good potential for electrolytic hydrogen production, and good capacity for offshore storage of CO2, so also potential to be producing low-carbon hydrogen through the routes with carbon capture and storage. And we can say that this region already is building up quite a pipeline of projects. They're accounting for about 1/5 of the total global pipeline of announced projects. So when we look at the world as a whole, that's really significant to be accounting for 20%. And I would close just by saying that we have another report that's under development coming out of this same initiative with Northwest Europe. It's the Northwest Europe Hydrogen Monitor, and it'll be released in early 2024. So keep an eye out for that to see our kind of latest assessment on the region.
We certainly will keep an eye out for that. Let's go global again, Rodrigo, if we may, and come back to this issue of partnership and making sure that all partners, not just Northwest Europe, are at the table, and at the table on these hugely important issues around the criteria, the trading relationships, everything. I gather that you have already been talking about this here at COP28. Give us a sense. It's great to have you here to get it straight from the horse's mouth. What's been going on?
Many thanks, first of all, for the invitation. The organizers, the European Investment Bank and the Benelux Secretariat, we are working very closely with you in the context of the Penta countries. But going back to your question, we had yesterday a very important day. It has been already mentioned by Tiffany. We organized a ministerial meeting, part of the official agenda of COP28. We started a process, I think it was almost 3 years ago, from the side of the Clean Energy Ministerial, bringing together potential exporting countries and importing countries, based on the notion that there is a big need from the side of the exporting countries to be part of the dialogue. And I think that you can also emphasize this need that we see also in other continents, not only in continents like Africa, but also in the Middle East and Latin America, to be part of a global discussion about a new market. It will be the first time in history we have to realize that we are going to move big volumes worldwide of renewable energy, and we will depend on third countries. I don't want to repeat the numbers that you've shown us, but we are talking about 70% dependency from Europe. We are talking about 60–70% of the demand is concentrated in the northern part of Europe, and we need volumes to meet some obligations coming from Europe. In only 7 years' time, we have to replace 42% of the gray hydrogen by renewable energy. 7 years' time. That means that we have to hurry up. And the relation between production, we have a lot of projects, announcements in Europe. 4% out of the 100% announcements has been translated into final investment decisions. We don't see any kind of FIDs at the moment because we have to deal with a very big price differential. The off-takers are not moving. Taking into account all these elements and then going back to the relation between exporting countries and importing countries, if you talk with countries like Chile or countries like in the Middle East, the only question that they are posing is where are the off-takers of Europe? They have to move. And we don't see any kind of activity in this area. That means that that's a big challenge for the governments in Europe, taking into account that we have to replace in 7 years' time so many volumes, a challenge to develop new instruments. And that is, I think, one of the issues that you try to put on the agenda, demand creation. And demand creation means that we have to be a little bit more innovative, developing new instruments to mobilize the off-takers. The relation between importing and exporting countries. Yesterday, an official meeting, ministerial meeting of COP, we have been able to mobilize 10 countries, exporting countries, also the European Commission is participating. In importing countries like Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Japan, South Korea. Our aim is to create a platform to have a dialogue about this new global market. And once again, I start saying something about the needs to be part of this dialogue, to participate in discussions about certification systems, to see if we are able to create and introduce mechanisms to recognize the systems that in different continents have been created. Because if the systems are not able to communicate with each other, we won't be able to create this market. This is one of the topics that we are elaborating at the moment. Standardization is the other one, demand creation, and we need also the private sector. That is why we had yesterday, I think, and I can look at Federico, we have been able to mobilize, let's say, the largest companies worldwide who are going to participate in a program to develop demand, but also to see if we are able together to accelerate the market because the needs that we have in Europe to replace the volumes.
And that's hugely important, isn't it? Having the biggest companies who are actually involved in the production of hydrogen from the Hydrogen Council there at the table as well. Federico, let me maybe ask you to come back on that. Are you quite optimistic that the kinds of platforms that Rodrigo is describing will help condition the right kind of partnerships between countries like yours, Chile? Because going back again to the point I made earlier, we do have a chance to get this right but there are a fair number of pitfalls along the way. I've been told not to use the C word, but clearly we do need to get this right. And partnership is not just about putting the logistics in place for the shipping and the delivery, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really confident that this kind of platform that we are working together, we are creating together with European governments, but not only, are one of the elements that we need to work on and progress if we want to match the ecosystem of producing countries and importers. I agree with Rodrigo. It's one of the key elements, a crucial element. It's the matchmaking of producers and consumers, and that's true. What he said. It's not a concern, but in Chile, private companies, which by the way mostly are foreign companies, are not Chilean one, they're waiting for off-taker in Europe and in Asia. Without off-takers, possibly we want scale in learning curve, reducing cost, and making hydrogen competitive. But a multilateral platform are not the only way to trigger the market. As I told before, we do also believe a lot in bilateral relations, especially with Europe and Asia. So these are the
bilateral
relations, yeah. And not only public-public, but also we do believe a lot in public-private partnerships.
Yes, absolutely. Let me come back and allow you another few words at the panel, but I just want to see if anyone in the audience has any comments or questions first. We're delighted, by the way, to see that Tina van der Straten has joined us. She's the Energy Minister from Belgium. Welcome, Minister. So we're looking forward to hearing from you in a moment. But any questions or comments from the audience? Otherwise, maybe I can invite, I don't know, Tom Houtekit, we're really delighted to see you, CEO of the Port of Antwerp. You've been mentioned a few times already, and there is going to be a challenge, isn't there, for the ports of Benelux if 70% of this hydrogen is coming through you, not you personally. Give us a sense of what that what that actually might mean, or anything from what you've heard that you think has been interesting.
Thank you. I think both port platforms is now Rotterdam and Antwerp. We are both working in the same condition. We have the same challenge. It's not an or situation. It's really we will have to do our utmost best, both of us, to reach the European target together with our export platforms. Yeah. We do see. I'm a little bit more positive because I do see on the offtake side first signs. I'm very glad that H2 Global is coming into practice in the beginning spring next year. So this will be the first barometer. We do see also initiatives like Total, which was mentioned, was mentioning an auction of 500,000 tonnes, which is substantial by 2030. Others are preparing, like ThyssenKrupp. So you do see to start initiatives from end market to create requests. Of course, will it lead to decisions already today? That's another question, because we all do know that, for instance, the NEON project in Saudi Arabia, between the FID and the operational execution, it takes 7 years. So this does mean that if we want to reach 2030, we need to take FIDs tomorrow. Yeah. We need them to take tomorrow. And with the conditions of the offtake, the unclarity of the offtake, it will not happen. So there is a need of an extra incentive on capex-related tax deduction systems or mechanism to push the button today. And I think that is really, that's more the IRA system, but that's something we need to look for. And how do you finance this? How do you change the financing part over time? I think that's an important one.
Thank you for that comment. I mean, maybe I will invite the panel to come back with a few observations. There's another question. Oh, there's two. They suddenly appeared. Okay, tell us who you are, little comment. Panel, keep the comments in your mind, and I'll invite you to make a few short answers. Over to you.
Thank you, Frank Wouters. I'm with the Benelux Business Council, but also I'm the chair of the MENA Hydrogen Lines. I had a question about certification. I mean, that is one of the precursors and determinants for trade. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how important that is? And then secondly, we had a number of meetings at COP this week about also the social license to operate. I mean, a large part of what we're trying to do is, move large volumes of ammonia. I know there's a big discussion at the port of Rotterdam at the moment. So how can we actually do that? What is the narrative that we need to maybe change to get the people on board?
Thanks for that, Frank. And over to this gentleman here.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Philip Julian. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a private sector green project developer, but I'm here spending 3 minutes to speak on 3 topics as a nationalist of Trinidad and Tobago, regionalist of the Caribbean, and a globalist on the conversation I've heard today. The outcome is I believe the Caribbean is in a prime place to join the likes of Latin America in this quest to provide Benelux with the green hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen targets that have been set. The reason why I say this so confidently is for 2 reasons. The first is Trinidad and Tobago is a natural gas-based economy. We are the world's largest exporter of ammonia and methanol. We have in the past exported 2.2 million tons per year of hydrogen in the form of ammonia and methanol. Currently, however, we face a crisis which is an opportunity that our natural gas is declining to the point where we are short of 400,000 tons per year of hydrogen. Why that's important to this conversation is if Trinidad and Tobago had 2 gigawatts of renewable energy available today, we could export 400,000 tons per year of low carbon green hydrogen in the form of ammonia and methanol to Benelux tomorrow. That moves me to the regionalist. So in the region, very briefly, we have geothermal reserves that have never been exploited in the order of 2 to 4 gigawatts. There's a conversation that is there to commit those green energy to Trinidad to make that a realization. We have had great conversations thanks to the Minister of Energy of Belgium with the Port of Antwerp, who sat in a panel with us as our Caribbean brothers and sisters 2 days ago, Mr. Tom Mombalio. So he's now considered part of the Caribbean fraternity. And all this to say, from a globalist perspective, if you draw a circle around the Caribbean, have an arrow pointing out of 400,000 to 800,000 tons per year to Europe, that can be a reality within the next 7 to 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, for all those questions, actually. So some are less questions, and some are more really interesting kind of commentaries on what we've been talking about. I'm really just going to come to each of you from the panel and ask you if you can pick up on not necessarily every single one of the points, but some of those points raised. I think Frank made a few, and I think we can't really go into great depth, but let's try and look at that issue also of standardization as well. Maybe start with you, Rodrigo, and come this direction.
First, I would like to react on the remarks from your side about the signs that we see from the market. We also see some positive signs, but we have to accelerate the process. We took the decision to participate in H2 Global. We are going to launch a tender in the beginning of 2024 together with Germany. We are going to put a lot of money on the table. We are talking about 600 million. These are very important steps, but we need more. And the question is, do we have more? We are talking about billions of euros needed to bridge the gap, the price gap. And the question is, in our opinion, the private sector, they should take more risk. Big companies are still waiting. We can understand the position, but taking into account the obligations that we have coming from Europe, and we have to replace these volumes in a very short time, then we need also another kind of attitude coming from some big companies that should use the volumes coming from the domestic production, but also coming from other parts of the world. Going to
just briefly,
to the certification topic, we signed yesterday this declaration to recognize the systems that many countries are creating. I think that the main target is to make the systems to introduce interoperability. Otherwise, the system, the trade is not going to grow as we want to see. You know, there are very positive developments. Organizations are working together. We already have the ISO methodology, a very important step for the private sector too. That means that we are progressing rapidly, and we still have to mobilize more experts to link all these systems. In the case of the Netherlands and Europe, we have to meet all the requirements coming from RED III and the Delegated Act. That means that we already have our own system, but recognizing what other countries are doing, then you can also facilitate the traders to show what they want to bring to the market.
Thanks. Tiffany, briefly.
Yeah. So first to say, we definitely agree on the question of certification. We need to get these systems talking to each other, and having a label with emissions intensity is really how we see it at the IEA of being useful for certification. Commenting just briefly on the point about ammonia and public acceptability, safety, toxicity, etc. I think the thing to keep in mind is that we have experience for decades of using ammonia in the chemical sector. It's a key input to fertilizers and a fertilizer itself. So it's a challenge we need to be thinking about and making sure that we have it front and center, but it's not something we can't overcome. There's ways to put in place the proper safety protocols, etc., to make that acceptable. So let's not let that be a barrier to moving forward.
Federico, Frank mentioned the idea of changing the way we have the conversation. I mean, I was quite struck by, when you opened up the panel, the amount of emphasis that the Ministry of Energy in Chile is putting on the outreach that you're doing around the country as well. Maybe you can just briefly expand on that. I guess that's partly a response to Frank's point.
In the last year, when the energy sector started to think of Chile, the idea is huge renewable potential, right? And that's true. We have 80 times the renewable potential we need today. So the great challenge is how to store it, how to store this renewable, and how to convey it and to export it. These challenges, I mean, it's something that seems easy, but they are really multi-sectorial and are both sides, both domestic and international. So that's why international outreach is also key to seek support to solve our domestic challenges. That goes through, may sound a cliche, put the community, the local community, at the center of the development of this new industry. And then we have plenty other more infrastructural, planning, permitting challenges that we need to tackle if we want to develop the industry in Chile.
And finally, Alina, I mean, I guess the EIB has a real role here in bringing people together, convening, but also in terms of the financing, taking on some of that risk as well, bringing the private sector in.
Yes, of course, and maybe picking on Frank's point as well, the key levers that we need is the risk capital. We mentioned capacity building, but also the standards and a conducive regulatory framework. And in the EU, I think we have made progress recently. For example, there has been a political agreement on the common rules and on renewable and natural gases and hydrogen, which will obviously pave the way, because what the investors need is visibility and predictability. Yeah. And that is a key ingredient to improving the business case for hydrogen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to this panel. We're going to hear from the Minister in a minute, but before we do, I just want to thank you all again very much. Rodrigo Pinto-Scholbach, who from the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. I like the fact that you incorporate the two in the ministry. That's a very good sign, isn't it? And Tiffany Voss from the International Energy Agency. Thank you so much for joining us. Also from the Chilean Energy Ministry, Federico Bernadelli, thank you, and Elina Roiner, Director of Operations Support and Climate at the European Investment Bank. Thanks so much. Maybe we give them a good hand. Provide on this area. So Minister Tina van der Straten, welcome, and I'll invite you to say a few words. Thanks very much.
Thank you for this kind introduction. Good morning to all of you, dear ladies and gentlemen. Also, warm welcome to our members of the panel that come from outside the Benelux, Chile, Trinidad and Tobago in the public. And also, I think James is in mind with us because they have an own panel on the industrial revolution in Africa. Because, of course, when we talk hydrogen, we are not talking about the Benelux, about Belgium alone, but also about other parts in the world. I would like to begin with something totally different. Hydrogen and energy have a long shared history. And maybe something that we should tell more. Because more than 13 billion years ago, the protons of hydrogen came into existence. And just a few minutes after the Big Bang, several millions later, the first hydrogen molecules started to form. And they gave rise to immense hydrogen clouds, which in turn started the formation of the stars. So hydrogen is the most abundant of all elements in the universe, and it can be found in all stars and big planets. And the fusion of hydrogen to form helium is the primary source of energy of big stars. And thanks to hydrogen, we can enjoy the light and the warmth of our sun. So on our planet, hydrogen and energy have this long shared history. Hydrogen powered the first internal combustion engines over 200 years ago. But now we call it the fuel of the future. And why? Of course, because it is light, it is storable, and it's energy dense. And because it produces no greenhouse gases. And so it has the potential to lead the energy transition. And for years, the energy transition has been at the heart of global climate ambitions. But here, in this week and next week, here in Dubai at COP28, we are ever more at a very serious momentum. Because this whole COP is about a global stock-taking where we are with regard to Paris. And Teresa Ribera, the sitting president of the European Union, always says, she was a negotiator at COP15 at Paris, she always says this is the second most important COP after Paris. It's here that we take stock. But it's not only taking stock. What we are already discussing this week before all the climate ministers arrive is what we are going to do if we not are en route or in line with the 1.5 degrees Celsius. We are already discussing what needs to be implemented. It's about the tripling up renewable energy capacity, doubling down energy use, and also phasing out fossil fuels. So this is, I hope, already, and at least we can call it between us like that, some sort of an implementing COP. It's not about targets alone. We have set a target. We have set a target in Paris, 1.5 degrees. And this is a week also of honesty, sincerity. Are we going to save the planet, yes or no? Is this enough? It's the baseline of the Portuguese delegation. And we know it's not enough, but we also know what we should do, what we can do, and we also know that we have the solutions in place. Tripling up, doubling down, and ending fossil fuels. And for that, we don't only need renewable electricity, but we also need molecules, we also need hydrogen. That's the reason why already in 2022, Belgium presented its hydrogen strategy. Taking into account the challenges of the energy crisis, we adapted a revised version in October 2022. Because in these challenging times, we need also, as policy makers, we also need to be agile. Our hydrogen strategy is based on the creation of a solid hydrogen market and also positioning Belgium as a transit hub for Central Western Europe, a hydrogen gateway to Europe, and boosting a regional hydrogen ecosystem. Because of course, we are a North Sea country. We are bordering the seas. We have our ports. We can build pipelines, but we can also bring hydrogen and derivatives through ships, through our ports, through our industries. And Belgium is of course not alone, because we are part of the Benelux. And in July already, I attended the Benelux Hydrogen Conference to learn about the results of their hydrogen study. And it has shown that the Benelux countries and the neighboring regions play a pioneering role as privileged interlocutors to shape EU legislation. And together with the Netherlands and with Luxembourg, we are the center of the European steel and chemical industry. Those industries that will provide us with the materials, with the products, with the half products that we need in the energy transition. It's in Belgium that we will make steel. It's in Belgium that we will make plastics and petrochemicals, but also in the Netherlands. And it's for that reason that we not only want to import hydrogen via seaports, but that we, and I say we as a Benelux, are also the H2, the hydrogen backbone. More than 20% of Europe's production capacity for methanol, for olefins, ammonia and aromatics is in the Benelux. And so is more than 30% of Europe's production capacity of the aforementioned sectors and steel. And we are also the home of major ports which already serve as an energy transmission hub for Europe. So to Chile, to Trinidad and Tobago, to Namibia and also to other countries represented here at COP, I say we are the go-to place. We are the go-to place, and we are very committed to work on a strategic partnership that will benefit both of us. It is not a question of green grabbing. It's a solution to build a strategic partnership that will benefit both countries, both regions. And that is very important in the cooperation, is that we need to reach out across the world more often. And that's why it was also so important that yesterday, at the high-level roundtable on hydrogen, that we signed this declaration of intent to cooperate more on certification. Because it's not only a European market, it's also an American market, an Asian market, and of course, you, other countries that will be the big producers of green hydrogen, will also reach out to those other markets. This is not a competition. This is not an energy transition that will be used to outcompete each other. It's about working better together. And this whole DOI, this declaration of intent, is to avoid fragmentation of the market, to create a liquid market, as was mentioned in the panel, but also it is used to de-risk producers. It's not only about supply. I talk a lot about supply, because of course we need huge supply, not only in Belgium but also in the Benelux, but I also have producers in mind. And de-risking producers comes also with robust regulatory framework, also with regard to certification. And in Belgium we are working a lot also with our friends in Oman to have a viable certification regulatory framework. It will unlock the market, because let's be also honest, and yesterday I was a little bit tough on the targets, that the targets in itself are neutral, or should create a technology neutral market of hydrogen. But I know that the target is ambitious, and it will not fall out of the sky. The green hydrogen will not, it's huge and big in the sky, but it will not fall down like this, like manna on earth. We have to make it work. We have to make it work. And to have this 42 target, which is an ambition target to work, we need this enabling regulatory framework. So as Belgium, but also Belgium, and I hope that I can also speak for the Benelux, yes, we are determined to play a pioneering role in the breakthrough of hydrogen in Europe, to establish this regional and worldwide hydrogen ecosystem. And we are committed, really committed, to remove the barriers that it can, to remove all the barriers that we can in order to allow for the energy transition of ports and the maritime sector. There are still challenges to be addressed in this widespread adoption of renewable hydrogen. And there are many. We have also heard this in the panel. But I am confident, I'm optimistic. Optimism comes with focus. And if we apply all the focus that we have here and also in the Benelux Hydrogen study, I'm absolutely confident that we will make this future happen because we will work together ever more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you so much for finishing on that note, and I think all of those listening in the room but also online will be hugely reassured to hear the messages, which I think have very much capped everything we've been talking about today. So on that note, we go forward, we keep up the good fight, and thank you to the panel again. Thank you to all the speakers as well, to the Ambassador of Luxembourg, Vice President of the EIB, and of course General Secretary of the Benelux Secretariat. And thank you to all of you. If I could ask all of you before we go to come up and do a photograph, and then good speed on the way. Thank you very much.